aircraft I've ever flown on in my life. So basically, I think it's the best. It's a wonderful aircraft. But we do not want, I'm an Australian. I like my barbecues. But I do not want a barbecue when I'm flying at 30,000 feet. I'd rather have barbecue on the ground. So I don't want my plane catching fire when I'm up there. So, and the FAA sort of agree with me. So they've grounded the whole flight. ANA in Japan, Japan Airlines, Qatar, Air India. Who else has got them at the moment? But Qatar's got lots. The first 787 Dreamliner I ever saw was, they were all stacked up, one after the other at Doha. Marvelous aircraft, but haven't been able to be used for the last 2 months. 2 months. So under that scenario, how many would you produce if you were the Boeing production manager? Are you going to be pessimistic and say that you're not going to fix this problem? I've said that I think the 787 is a new generation of aircraft. It has composite materials. It has everything going for it. Do you give that all away as Boeing? Do you assume that because we are broken now, we can't fly, that nobody else is going to want to fly those planes ever again? What if tomorrow the FAA says, okay, you've solved the problem, no more barbecues when you're flying, you can just carry on? So you're the production planner. How many are you going to produce? The same amount? Same? Full potential? Full speed ahead. Damn the torpedoes. Teddy Roosevelt. Yes, go straight ahead. That's the optimistic view. I don't know whether, but you've got some options. You can go all the way from 0 to all the way to no. Let's expand production. Because, this is such a great plane. So there's your range. Where are you going to pick? It's going to be a very difficult decision to make. And it's not going to be time series. It's not going to be what's happened in the past. Your production is going to be based on here and here.
And orders, if you have a confirmed order.
What's Air India done at the moment? Air India has now said, okay, we'll keep the orders, but we'll maintain the orders, but we're going to sell it to a leasing company, and then we'll lease them back. So there are changes that are actually occurring. It is a very interesting scenario. They did what? 780 throw. Okay. I thought that I did hear something that British Airways or somebody had actually placed an order, but I only just got the last bit of it. So you know that for sure. They've confirmed the order. Okay. All right. All of these forecasts, if you think about it, if you're going to be forecasting in this particular way, let's move it to the production planner for British Airways. How many would you order? So it depends on your set of circumstances. There are lots of ways in which you can make decisions under uncertainty. Unfortunately, we don't have the time in this course to actually talk about making decisions under uncertainty. But there is a mini-max, a maxi-max situation, a maxi-min situation, a mini-min situation, and there's something called a Lepage scenario. These are all ways in which you can look at a situation and get an entirely different answer. At the end of the day, it depends on your risk orientation and whether you're actually prepared to take the sorts of risk that you're prepared to take. If we're talking about aggregate forecasting, aggregate planning, it's up to the individual and how that individual thinks as well. So British Airways may say, yes, full speed ahead, down the torpedoes. But Air India may say, well, okay, we'll mitigate this by sending it out and selling these planes to a leasing company, and then we'll release, which is a sort of a way in which you can cover your bases. It's not the optimum way of doing it, but it's a less risky idea. You don't have to put your money out. If you're not going to get your planes, it's your leasing company that's going to be at risk, not you. You're mitigating the risk. But here's two situations here. There's the Boeing side, and there's the Airbus side. Now, you've just moved from being the production forecaster for Boeing. You've been promoted or moved sideways or whatever to Airbus Industries. Now plan. Now plan. Now plan your production for 2014. What has changed? Nothing about Airbus. Your facilities are exactly the same. But you cannot do your forecasts without looking at what your competition is doing. And if you know that Boeing may be in some sort of strife with the 787, you have to take that into consideration, do you not, when you take your own plan? Or else you're just being an isolationist. This is part of supply chain. It's not just about what you do, it's about what your competition is doing as well. And at the beginning of this week's topics, I talked about the positive side of uncertainty, of how you can take good fortune out of somebody else's misfortune. There was an example about the oil industry, oil drilling industry. I'm sure that some of you are in that industry here. And it took place in the North Sea, between Scandinavia and Britain. Now, if anybody knows that particular area, the weather is bad. I mean, really bad. So if you have an oil rig in the middle of the North Sea, there is it's reasonable to assume that you are only going to get, I don't know the figures, but we'll pick them out. You're going to get 280 days production a year, because of the rest of the year, the weather will be so bad that you cannot have an operations of drilling oil. Yes? So you have 280 days production that you're planning for. So you set up your distribution to know that if you're going to do, let's say 100,000 barrels a day. No, that'd be too much. Is that too much? 100,000 a day? Somebody tell me some figures. From a decent oil well, what do you get? 100,000 a day. You get 100,000 barrels a day. So 100,000 by 280 days, 2,800,000 barrels a year. So you're making your production, you're making your storage facilities, you're making your transportation from the oil well to your storage facilities on shore. You're going to make that 2.8 million for the year. So what if you have good weather? What if the weather in the North Sea allows you to pump for 320 days of the year? Are you going to take any advantage of that? But what if you have set up your production chain, the chain, to only handle 2.8 million barrels a year? What if you actually only set that up? And that's what I'm saying. You have to take the positive side of uncertainty, not just take the negative side. You know that if the weather gets really bad in 1 year, and you can only do 250, you're going to be down on production over what it could be. There's nothing that you can do about that. But there could be something that you could do if it's more than your 280 days a year. And that is where we're talking about the positive side of uncertainty, where you need to be flexible enough to say, if we have good luck on this particular one, if we have good fortune, then we need to be able to take advantage of it. Not just to say, okay, we'd planned on 2.8 million a year, and we can't do any more. You should take advantage of that, of those added, the lucky jumps, we call them, the lucky jumps.
But the airline industry is not, I don't think it is like that. It is not like oil production. It's completely different.
Where did the airlines come in?
No, the airline industry,
Yes,
now you are saying Airbus,
yes, oh yes.
can take the advantage of the problem of 787.
Yeah.
How you think Airbus can take this?
Well, one reason that they won't be able to do it is if they're at maximum capacity. If they're at maximum capacity and haven't got all of the resources that are available to do more.
But some players will take the advantage, not
Okay.
Airbus.
Well, maybe not Airbus, but others. Sure, sure. Yeah. I'm not too sure whether the Brazilian ones would do it. Would they? I thought they had smaller planes.
No, they have a capacity, maximum capacity of 430. Twin engine aircraft like 737.
430 passengers?
No, 130.
Oh, right, okay. All right. But somebody is going to take advantage of it. If we don't work for Airbus or we don't work for Boeing, and somebody has some misfortune, then let's be flexible enough to be able to take advantage of that. I mean, as long as we didn't set up in an ethical way, as long as we were not part of setting up that disadvantage, why shouldn't we benefit as business people? Why shouldn't we? The point that I'm making here is you need to look at the positive side of uncertainty when you're forecasting this and build your flexibility into those systems, which says that if good things happen, if we get a lucky break here, let's take advantage of that lucky break and not just say, well, we could have done something with this. You know, if only we had done this, we could have sold more, or we could have produced more oil. We could have taken more oil out of this oil well, or whatever. So you need to be flexible enough. So, MRP, I've actually done this, but it requires what's known as a bill of materials, or BOM. Let's look around. What do we can all see? We can all see these chandeliers, can we not? We all see the chandeliers? I was going to say the desk, but everybody seems to have different types of desks. These chandeliers everybody can see. If we were building these chandeliers, what materials go into them? We've got bits of crystal like this. Are they all the same? How many of those? Let me see. It's 52. I'm sure somebody's going to say, no, there's only 48 there. There's 52. There's 52 of those little gizmos. I don't know what they're called. This gizmo here. 52 of those. What about some of these? You got 28 of those. This is my bill of materials. You got 28 of those gizmos. What did I say? 52 of these gizmos. And what about these candle holders here? This is, you got 52 of those as well. 52 of those. You've got how many bulbs? 52 bulbs. 2 of them not working. You've got some dangly bits here with crystal on the end. These are the components that you actually require to do those. So what you do is you say, well, I'm not going to build just one. Even in this room, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in this room, there's 5 next door. So the order is going to be for 20. So my production run is going to be 20. And a bill of material is simply how much is in one, so how much do I need to do a batch of 20? Simple calculations. I need 20 times 54 of these gizmos here, and so many of these, and so many of these. In a materials requirements planning, that's all a bill of materials is. You just place an order for all of the materials that's actually required. Oh, and you've got some cords and everything that's actually required to go in these things. I should have stuck with the desk. They're much easier. They've got a front bit and a top bit. But you understand what it is. Anything that you are building in a manufacturing sense, it's made up of raw materials. And you are deciding precisely what it is. How many screws, for example, do you need up there to put all of this together? How many nuts and bolts and whatever? So that's what a bill of materials is about. So each of these manufactured items has those components, and these components and their volumes that is the basis for an MRP system. The outputs of MRP can be used to produce budgets and cash flow analysis. And that's the type of system that was discussed in that Tandy TRS-80 story that I developed my production plan for. Very simple, very straightforward. Limited by the technology that was available, but the system remains. The advantages is that you know if you've ordered in 1,000 and you use 1,200, you know there's a wastage. You know that you are not being efficient at the use of your widgets or whatever the components are. It also enables you to compare performances between different production facilities. Say that you've got a facility in Sharjah, you've got a facility in Al Ain. You can compare how each plant is performing against each other with the same raw materials. You can say who's wasting widgets. It can be modified very quickly to meet different design requirements or different materials. Say we want this in what would that be? That would be plastic. We want it in glass or the other way around. You know, to do it cheaper. You can change these so you can order them more easily. It can be easily calculate economic order quantities. How many should I order at one time? What is my batch size of production that would allow me to minimize my cost overall? There's an example here of Dolphin Seafoods. Slide 12, we can make it. The example of Dolphin Seafoods is that, and it's a shocking name, isn't it? Every time I say Dolphin Seafoods, I think, who would choose the name Dolphin Seafoods? This is one of my clients. They had, it was a frozen food store. And they used to supply frozen fish and snack foods for the takeaway food market. And this was in southeast Queensland, just outside of Brisbane. They had a big storage facility. Outside, the temperature is like a normal day in Sharjah, 28, 29 degrees. And inside, it's minus 12 inside the freezer. So what was happening was every time an order was being loaded onto a truck, the first thing that the driver would do would be to take the order and would be to open the door, the sliding door to the freezer, and you would get whoosh as the cold air came out and whoosh as the hot air came in to the freezer. And he would go in and he would pick up so many was on this order. You know, 5 cartons of this, 2 cartons of this, turn it around, and he would go out, open the door, whoosh goes the cold air out, and whoosh goes the hot air in. And then he would load it onto his truck. Then he would look at his next order, and he would say, yes, okay. He'd roll his little truck in, open the door again, whoosh goes the air, and you can see this is very inefficient, that you're getting cold air coming out and hot air going in every time you open that door. And the cost of keeping that freezer at minus 10 degrees was getting higher and higher. So it was a very simple system. The simple system said that why keep going in all of the time? Why don't you make up a bill of materials for the load, not for the order? So the truck that he was going to be delivering on had 10, maybe 15 orders on it. So what you simply had to do was to take a combination of all of the orders and take it onto what's known as a load sheet, which is really a bill of materials for that particular load. And then you would go in with your trolley with a load sheet rather than orders, and you would go, we need 6 of those, 5 of those, 4 of those, 10 of those, 15 of those. You've gone in once, you come out once, you've got your truck. It's a bill of materials. It's just being creative with what it is that you've got. And they saved something like $4,000 a month in electricity costs simply by adding that one particular system. Oh, that would have been early 90s.
Now we are in 2013. It's completely different.
Why? Doesn't hot air go out and cold air come in?
Now, what they do, they give you a temperature break.
Mm.
So when you go to that, you have a freezer of minus 18.
Yes,
You will start with minus 5
yes,
area, minus 10.
yes.
So when you reach minus 18, you are very close
Sure,
to that temperature.
sure.
So they can take.
Yeah. But the same thing sits though. Do you think anybody that calls themselves Dolphin Seafood is going to be that sophisticated? So yeah, there are new systems that you can actually use. But this was simply a freezer with one door. That's all it was. And of course, there are lots of efficient ways of doing it. But the example here was a bill of material rather than the process itself. MRP2, more sophisticated information systems, this adds resources to that materials only MRP system. It adds labor content, how much time does it take to perform a particular task, providing a more complete cost analysis of this manufacturing process. And it gives greater applicability to service organizations. The ERP concept is once where disparate system ruled manufacturing, distribution, finance, and sales. Everybody had a separate information system. They would all control it very separately by systems that they developed internally for their own functional area. You take information from every function. It's a tool that assists employees and managers plan, monitor, and control the entire business rather than simply an individual function within that business. It makes your business operate as an enterprise rather than as a series of disparate departments or functional areas. So the word in enterprise in ERP is used in place of manufacturing in MRP2 to recognize the broader scope of ERP systems compared to MRP and MRP2. So ERP is a structured approach to optimizing companies' internal value chain. When data such as a sales becomes available at one point in the business, it courses its way through the software automatically and calculates the effects of that transactions on other areas, such as manufacturing, inventory, procurement, invoicing, and booking the actual sale to the financial ledger. It has its roots in materials requirements planning of the 70s and manufacturing resource planning, or MRP2, systems of the 80s. And now ERP systems such as those available from SAP, PeopleSoft, which is now part of Oracle and BAN, evolved from the MRP2 base to include support for non-manufacturing processes such as sales, marketing, HR, payroll, mainstream accounting functions. When I was in Montreal in 2007, I think it must have been 2007, I was in Montreal for an international conference on information systems. We had a keynote speaker. There were people from within operations management and ERP systems from around the world. This was the big conference of the year for information systems. And we had a keynote speaker. It was a woman. She was the Chief Information Officer of an organization I hope that you've heard of. It's Cirque du Soleil, which is based in Montreal. It's a circus, but they don't have animals in this circus. It's only performers. Yeah? It's in Dubai. Yes. Yeah, it's very famous. I think they now have 5 different troops going around the world. It's probably one of the most famous circus of its type. Well, yeah, definitely the most famous of its type. The Chief Information Officer gave everyone, all of the IS professionals from the world that had come to Montreal, a version of how Cirque du Soleil was actually using an ERP system. And we still came, well, and we all knew that it could be used for reasons other than manufacturing, but we didn't quite realize until this woman was telling us, you know, I looked around the room, and there's professors from all over the world, you know, people that I admired and read their books and used their books in my courses. They were sitting there with their mouths open thinking, wow, what a talk this is. This was one of those really great talks, and it was never filmed. It was never filmed. If only I had my camera there, I'd be using this as the example. She talked about Cirque du Soleil using an ERP system, didn't even say that it was SAP, but later on I knew that it was SAP, where she took a Brazilian Olympic athlete who had just retired from competitive, what do you call it, gymnastics. He came from some small town in the middle of Brazil. He had been to the Olympics, a couple of Olympics, but he'd retired from the Olympics, and he wanted a job as an acrobat within the Cirque du Soleil. And this woman talked us through all of the things that an ERP system would do in this particular industry. From the time of actually getting his application in, of what they would do and how the system, how the information system actually helped. And as it went through, the guy came to Montreal, started to be trained, and the types of routines that he would do, the muscle groups that he would most be vulnerable in doing those particular activities, the diet that this guy had to have, all the medical history of this particular guy, because this really was the resource that Cirque du Soleil had. It's acrobats. It's people. They had no animals within the circus. They had to look after the people. And they were looking after the people with enormous care and precision. They had parts of each of the routines, and they would have physiologists. Is that the word, physiologist? That actually talks about the muscle groups of what you actually use, of actually analyzing how they would stop the guy from damaging himself. It was the most advanced form of enterprise resource planning, and there was no manufacturing at all. It was about people. It was about how they looked after the people. It was a really fascinating talk. And I have to say that when the whole room, including myself, was going, and we were riveted on what she was actually saying, it was the best example of how what an enterprise system could actually do within a service industry. No idea. No idea. But there is an HR module in there which she was able to actually develop. I would have thought that it would have been PeopleSoft would have done that better. ERP software is not intrinsically strategic by itself. It is an enabling technology. Simply because of bringing in an ERP system into your organization, it is not going to give you great advantages on its own. It is simply a catalyst, or not the driver. It is a method of doing additional things. It provides you with the opportunities to change your processes, to make your processes more efficient. Just by itself, it's not going to actually create vast changes in your organization. So there's all sorts of implications here about changing jobs, about changing the way that we do things within an organization. And it is that change that we're going to be talking about next week.